So, we have been going through the principles of being a godly man and the different practical approaches we can take in order to accomplish that. Now, of course, as we've been talking about as we went along, these principles don't just apply to men. And a lot of these we will either revisit or look from the other side when we get to the godly wife. Now, specifically, we've been focusing mainly during this talk about of a godly husband. Now, we're going to have to add a few things when we get to the godly father, when we get to that, but we're going right now for godly husband, then we'll do godly wife, and then we'll come back to father, mother, and children. Okay. So we had gotten to principle number 5. I don't know if anyone still has their papers with them. I see one set over there and one set there. But principle number 5, does anyone have it there with them?
It says provision and protection.
Okay. Provision and protection. Now, there was one, actually, I don't know if I have it out of order.
Yeah, it's 6, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's number 6. Yeah, what was number 5? Covenant, I believe.
Yeah, covenant and faithful.
Covenant faithfulness. No back door to marriage. Okay. So we had previously mentioned there are certain non-negotiables in marriage. Marriage, how long is it meant to last according to God's word? Forever, right? It's going to be your entire life. It's meant to be permanent. A lot of people, did you have something, Matt?
Yeah, I thought it was only supposed to be until you're taken
Yeah,
up
do your
to
part.
The rapture?
the rapture, because, I mean, marriage, then some people would have 3 or 4 husbands, especially, you know, how,
That one
women
person,
live longer than
they get remarried?
they get remarried.
Right,
So
right,
what do you
right.
do with that?
Well,
What do
what do you do with
like,
that?
You're married to me for 50 years, what are you doing?
Well, what do you do with that? What is the answer to that biblically?
Jesus told him when he was talking to the
Sadducees, right? Had the multiple husbands, yeah.
In heaven, you won't be given in marriage. When I go to heaven, I pray for sure that my wife Melinda will be there. I also pray for sure my wife Becky will be there. When I go there, there's not gonna be a fist fight up there, because we're both going to love all 3 of us are gonna love each other as we love the Lord. We're not gonna see each other as husband and wife anymore. We're gonna see each other as Christ sees us. And what that means, it's not given.
Think of it like this, Matt. Whenever we're married, right? What makes me and Carly married and me and some close friend of ours not married? Well, we obviously have a closer physical relationship. And we also spend all day with one another, emotionally connected. When we get to heaven, what is the purpose of marriage here on earth? According to the Bible, it is to raise a godly seed. It's to produce children and to raise them for the Lord. When you live in an eternal life and you're not replacing yourself, right? You don't have to replace the human population. Everyone who's there is there. And you're not producing children, well, that physical need is gone. That physical relationship need is gone. So what that leaves us with is just that emotional connection. The Bible is very clear, both in the New and the Old Testament, that relationships that you formed here on earth continue on in heaven. And that means that if your child happens to die before you, or your wife happens to die before you, or your mother happens to die, you can be rejoined with them. David talked about it, and the Bible does tell us that David gave prophecies. Also in the New Testament, whenever the Thessalonians were real upset that people had already died, he's like, don't worry about it. We're going to meet back up in heaven, right? Now, the good news is all the things you find annoying about one another, not that anyone finds anything annoying about me, but all those annoying features would hopefully be gone. But the idea is we do continue our earthly relationships in heaven, and I'm sure form new relationships, but it's not about physically procreating. So that part of it is now set aside and behind. So that's what we're talking about when it comes to marriage. But that doesn't mean me and Carly aren't still best friends for the rest of eternity, right? We're still going to be around. We're still going to be together. That's why it's so important whenever Paul talks about marriage, how if you have an unbelieving spouse, don't abandon them. Maybe you can get them saved. If they choose to leave, they choose to leave. But if they don't, try to get them saved. Because your goal, obviously, you cared enough about them to marry them. You need to try to get them back into the fold so that they become servants of Christ as well. Okay, and now getting back on track here, which is a very good point, though. A lot of people misunderstand what Jesus is talking about in that particular passage. So marriage in this life meant to be till death and then beyond, obviously, as we just spoke about. Some people, they talk about divorce as if it's a last resort. Christian marriages, they might end in divorce. Sometimes there are situations where they end that way, but that is not supposed to be approached as a resort at all. So when a Christian, whenever you strive to get married, whenever you want to be married, if you're a believer before marriage, you should look for another Christian. You should seek to be equally yoked. Okay. Do you guys know what the term yoked means?
It's that yellow stuff in the egg.
The egg yolk, exactly. That's what he was talking about. So oxen, big wooden bar goes across back, they're both their backs, and it's supposed to distribute the weight, right? But the problem is, whenever there is one animal that's bigger than another animal, the bigger animal actually has to carry way more of the weight, and it actually makes the whole thing less efficient. And it's like if I have a Christian wife and I am not saved, and I start to pull away from the church, and she's trying to pull towards the church, and then we have kids in the mix, do you see where that's going to make working together or plowing the field of life together much, much, much more difficult? So that's the idea here, is we're supposed to be equally yoked. But fact is, that doesn't always work out. Some people get saved after marriage, and then they're already in a non-believing marriage. Some people ignore faith as a priority when it comes to selecting a spouse. They find somebody that they kind of get along with, have fun with, and they end up getting married. And there's not a set rule already that Christ will be our priority. Now, there's all kinds of folks, even in politicians today, who some claim to be Christians and they're married to people of other faiths, not just atheistic people. But all, you got
Also be, I mean, the Bible means like to be equally yoked, have a spouse that is also a follower of Christ. But it can also be, if you're not equally yoked in the things that you think about and how you want to raise your kids, if you want them to be homeschooled versus public school or whatever,
Yeah.
you have to be on the same page with everything.
right. And that's the
Not
thing.
too into
And that's one of the keys, again, that's going to be with all what we've talked about. And that's exactly right. Even with communication, as you make big decisions in your home. I don't know if you remember a few sessions back, we talked about how these decisions, like big financial decisions, big education decisions, you have to discuss and come to an agreement. It's not your agreement or you win or my agreement and I win. It's our agreement and we are going to put it into place. And if,
And a lot of times, people look at Bible times and everything else as how long the engagements were was like ridiculously long. That's crazy. But you're not gonna know somebody until you know them. You know what I mean? And a lot of times women get married and men, and they think they know who they married. And a couple of months into it, they're like, when did you like this? You never said anything about this. This might have changed my mind at the time, you know? So
for sure.
that's why it's not always good to just run off. Everybody's like, their emotions take over, you know, and they're just like, I love him, he's gorgeous, he's the one.
That's what my wife said when she saw me.
Yeah, and then everybody was trying to tell her. But that's why though, and that's why we are supposed to be still and know I'm God. Slow down for a minute. Put this man before the Lord and see. And then, first of all, they can say anything. I'm a wonderful Christian. You're going to love me. I'm going to go to church with you every day till we get married. And
Then right
all of a
after
sudden,
it goes away.
Sundays are too hard to get up.
Yeah, but
You
yeah,
know?
sometimes there's things that just come along that
Right.
you don't even.
Well, life throws curveballs at you. You have to have the same foundation. And that's, again, whenever I talk to people who are young and are dating and are in serious relationships, I said, how often do you pray together? How often do you read the Bible together? While you're dating, how does she respond whenever it's time to read the Bible? How does he respond whenever you say, hey, come on, let's pray? Is it something that's like, oh, we have to do this again? Or is it something like, no, you're right, let's pray? Or no, we need to clear our thoughts. We need to purify our minds. The question is, how serious do you take God? And you should not get involved in a relationship very deeply or any permanent way until you know where this person stands, especially on matters of faith. If you're a believer, because that is going to be the biggest source, the biggest driver in your life is God. And if you're not on the same page, it's going to be a major area of strife. I have a family that had gotten married, and it was a while back, and one of them is very Catholic leaning, one of them is very Protestant leaning. That, even if not even arguing which direction is the right way to go, obviously we have our thoughts here in the Baptist church, but the point is, regardless of that, it's going to come to a lot of big decisions. What do we do with the kids? Where do we take them to church? When do we get them baptized? Do we get them baptized? There's a lot of stuff that's going to cause a lot of friction. And if both people hold their faith very sincerely, you have to have friction. I mean, you'd have to. So these are all things you got to consider before you go and say, I do, before you even accept at the offer, at the engagement. You got to be on the same page with so many things. Now, a lot of us, we're past that point, right? One of us, I think, is not past that point. But the idea, going back to marriage, though, it's meant to be a zero escape covenant. It's not meant to be, there is no way out. Although the Bible makes exceptions for it, that's not the idea behind it. The idea is this is a permanent covenant. What does covenant mean? I have made a deal with you. And what do the traditional wedding vows end with? Till death do us part. The only thing that separates me from you is death is going to separate us. But biblically, that's only temporarily, right? Death separates us temporarily until we're reunited, as the Thessalonians tell us. We'll be reunited, right? So, your wife is to never question, as a godly man, again, I'm speaking to godly men, and we'll come back to the godly women. She is never to question whether you are all in or all out. A godly man is all in, just as Jesus explained. What did Jesus, he quoted actually from Genesis, Mark chapter 10, verse 7 and through 9. He says, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the twain shall be one flesh. So then they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man put asunder. That is quoted at many weddings, this particular verse. But do you understand what Jesus just said? Your previous connections, your previous loyalties to your parents, it's not that you stop honoring your parents. It's not that you stop visiting your parents. Not that you stop loving your parents. But they are now in second place to your wife. They are now in second place to your wife and her needs and the family, and then ultimately your children. So you're going to leave them and you become one flesh. From now forward, just like I can't say, man, my arm sucks, let me just sever that, I don't need that leg. That's how God sees and how it's expected we're to behave in marriage, okay? Now, regarding the godly family, this is what we're talking about. What about single people? What about single men specifically? You're probably going to encounter women, if you ever are single, or if you, of course, were single in the past, you're going to encounter women who are already married to other men. They are in a covenant for life. It doesn't matter whether they're Christian or not. If they start flirting with you, is that something you're going to entertain? I'm sorry, you're married, right? I'm sorry. And I know the world, it's not very popular in the world today. Well, maybe they're not happy. It doesn't matter. Nobody asked whether you're happy or not happy. The question is, did they make a covenant for life? Now, all of this is very easy to say to a godly man, be faithful to your spouse. If your wife feels the same about Christ, is faithful, is loving, and so on and so forth. But what about if you have a wife who's very wayward? What about if you have a wife who causes all kinds of trouble for you? Well, let's just look at it as an example from the Bible. There was a man named Hosea. Who knows about Hosea's wife? Yes. Okay, this is the worst of the worst situations. So I'm going to read to you a couple verses from Hosea chapter 1, verse 2 through 3. Now, by the way, this is so bad that some people think it was just a parable or a vision God gave him, because there's no way a man can deal with this kind of woman. But I don't believe so. I think the Bible's pretty clear. This is actually what he did. So Hosea chapter 1, verse 2 through 3 says, the beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. And the Lord said to Hosea, go, take unto thee a wife of whoredoms and children of whoredoms, for the land has committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, which conceived and bare him a son. So he says, I want you to go get essentially an unfaithful prostitute woman, born of prostitutes, lives among prostitutes, and just goes around and is very wayward. Does that sound like good wife material? I would say no, not exactly my ideal situation. So if there was ever going to be a woman suitable for divorce and abandonment from the man, you would say this is the one. But throughout the book of Hosea, she keeps running off. She keeps running off to return to her sin, but he remains faithful to her. He gives us an extreme picture, and again, I'll say extreme, of God's love for us, because what do? We're like his wife. We keep running off to do our own thing. We keep falling back into sin. We keep trying to disobey God and live disobedient. We say, don't do this, and then the next day we find another way to do it. It just shows us how wicked we can be. And of course, it's an example or an analogy or a type, as we call it, of God's love for us. So whenever she goes and gets caught up in her own sin, and actually because she's been living such a sinful life, she becomes enslaved, what does Hosea do? I'm going to switch to chapter 3 now of Hosea chapter 3, verse 2 and 3. So he goes and he says, so he bought her back from slavery. It cost him his own money. He bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, for an omer of barley, and for half omer of barley. And I said to her, thou shalt abide for me for many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot. Thou shalt not be for another man. So will I also be for thee. He goes, he purchased her out of her filth. And he says, I want you to be faithful. I will be faithful to you, but you remain faithful to me. So you see, again, it's not an easy situation that he was in. But again, that's an extreme example of God's just complete love for us. No, from his point of view, he is completely faithful to his covenant. And Hosea lived that out by being completely faithful to her covenant, even with all her flaws. Now, all these people want to say, oh, but you don't know my husband. Is he like this? Oh, but you don't know my wife. Was she quite like this, where everywhere she goes, she's always running wayward? And again, this is not an argument that you should accept abuse, that you should accept, unfaithfulness. That's not a point of that. The point is, when you make the covenant, how serious are you taking it? There are situations, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are situations where divorce happens in the Christian life. And there are allowances in the Bible for divorce. Doesn't mean it's what God prefers, but it is something that sometimes happens. We make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes are very serious. But you see the idea here. Good.
It also shows too that throughout the Old Testament, and even when Jesus was with us, the value of a woman was not much. They didn't value her much at all. And throughout the Bible, the godly men that we see in the Bible did value their wives very much. So it wasn't everybody didn't, but when he says they sold her for 15 pieces of silver, remember they sold Jesus for 30. That was the price of a slave. So she wasn't even worth the price of a slave to get her back just because of what people thought of her. But yet, Hosea was doing what the Lord told him to do.
What was she worth to him?
Right.
Is what your point, right?
Exactly. And so people were watching him. See, the one thing too is throughout the Bible, it wasn't like everybody, like in this church, there could be 15, 20 people in this church that are truly hearing from the Lord. Back then it was one or two at a time, and so when they were the prophets, people knew they were men of God. So they were watching everything they were doing, and they understood this means something, that he's doing all this, and they're paying attention. So,
and God, remember, again, I know we don't study these minor prophets, we call them, only because their books are short, not because they're messages, but we don't study them that often. But what is the picture of this? I mean, you see Jesus Christ redeeming us in this picture and paying whatever it costs to redeem us. That's the whole picture of this. But of course, that's conversation for another time. But getting back to the godly man, what's another example we have? Well, someone else who's treating marriage as sacred and permanent comes from a man who was not married at the time. This man, Joseph. You guys remember the story of Joseph, right? So he was single, and a married woman tries to get him into bed with her. You guys remember the story? Right?
Oh, Mrs. Potiphar.
Yes, Mrs. Potiphar. He leaves no doubt that if you sin with a married person, it's a sin against God. So in Genesis chapter 39, verse 8, we read, but he refused, and he said to his master's wife, behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he hath into my hand. I run the house. There is none greater in the house than I. This is Joseph. Neither has he kept anything back from me, but thee, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? When you either commit adultery or cause someone else to commit adultery, you are not just sinning against them. Way more importantly, you're sinning against God. And Joseph understood that. Now, despite his refusal, she doesn't give up. She continues to pursue it, even to the point where she tries to assault him and grabs his outfit, right? Says, you can't leave. And of course, he leaves the outfit, runs out of the house naked, knowing, I would say, especially since he's the guy who runs the house, that he's going to be probably put to death for this. Imagine if a man runs out of your wife's room naked, okay, and you are a major leader in the Egyptian army, right? You're a major general or commander. You think it's going to end well for that man? Probably not. But he was way more interested in preserving the sanctity of marriage and specifically honoring God than allowing himself to end up in this situation and and cause adultery to happen in this home. So for the godly men that we're trying to speak to here today, how are we practically going to prevent divorce, prevent unfaithfulness from entering into our marriages? Okay, first, be very clear. It is completely normal and expected that every man's mind is going to crave attention from women. Every man, married or single, is extremely aware from a woman's touch, from a woman's attention. When she comes up and just brushes your shoulder, you are very aware of it, whether it's your wife or not. It's just a fact. Men are extremely aware if a woman even happens to, brush against you. It wasn't even an intentional thing. Men are very aware. If you guys don't know that, now you do. Okay, that is the fact. And women, what were they created for? What was the purpose of them? Not to have babies, for the man, right? They were created specifically for men to love and to appreciate. Remember, Eve was once part of Adam. So God would have created a way for us to continue the human population, but instead, he wanted to make someone perfect for Adam. The words from Genesis 2:18 says, the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make for him a help meet or suitable or perfect or completing for him. In 1 Corinthians 11, verse 7, we hear this term, the woman is the glory of man. If you right now say, this is my glory, this is my pride and joy, that means this is the best of the best, the top thing I have. And according to Paul, who at the time he wrote this was certainly unmarried, he said, the woman is the glory of the man. The man's greatest pride and joy is when he has this woman here, and that's the idea. And in verse 9 of the same chapter, he says, the man was not created for the woman, but the woman for the man. It is completely natural for men to be drawn to women. But the day that you commit to a single woman, okay, that takes every other woman off the table for the rest of your life. Yet, how do you prevent this natural response of attention to other women? When a woman shows you attention, how are you going to prevent that? How are you going to prevent, what's going to prevent us from not even considering leaving our wives for any reason, particularly for another woman? Well, let's be practical. Number one, limit the opportunity for temptation. Watch what you watch. Do you think Hollywood isn't aware of what draws the eyes? Do you think HBO doesn't get what keeps men interested? Do you think these people don't know? Don't flirt. You think the social medias, the hidden delete your browsing history, the delete your messages, you don't think that all has a purpose? The hidden messages, the require Face ID. How about emotional intimacy? How about whenever you're texting someone on Facebook or you're texting someone on Messenger or somewhere else, you're emailing someone behind a password without your wife present and aware, especially. Now, of course, that includes, by the way, in matters of faith. You don't have to look very long to see where pastors have gotten caught up in unfaithfulness with what started as a conversation of somebody coming for counseling. Okay, there are very, very, very important safeguards you need to put up in every situation. You guys remember Vice President Mike Pence a couple administrations ago? People made fun of him. You know what they made fun of him for? He refused to go to dinner for work with another woman, just him and her. He doesn't care if it's public or private. He doesn't go to dinner with just one other woman. His wife must be present, or he doesn't go, or it's got to be a big group setting. And everybody made fun of him. But then every other day, what do we hear every politician where they've gotten involved in some scandal and somehow nobody makes fun of them for that, which is completely backwards.
The Bible is clear too. The Bible says, do not let evil be spoken of your good. So you might even think it's innocent or anything, but if somebody's seeing it, just like we were saying in the beginning, if you're just catching a couple of words of the conversation and you assume it might be about you. If you see me coming out of Kroger's, might be my sister-in-law, but if I'm holding her hand or hugging her, it's not going to look good, you know? As a chef and stuff, there were a lot of times I would have to give some waitresses rides home. I make them sit in the back seat. They're like, what are you doing? I said, I'm married. I cannot be seen driving around with another woman in the front seat of my car. I'm more than glad to give you a ride home, but this is
It's
what it is,
appearances, sure.
you know, so.
Yeah, and also not only for appearances, it prevents you from seeing things. Because again, your mind can go very quickly into the wrong direction. Now, that includes, again, matters of faith, right? If a woman is struggling in her faith and is confiding in you, what is she doing? She's opening up to you. What does a man naturally do? A man's natural instinct is to comfort the woman. For any woman, it doesn't matter. You see right now, go to the park, have a woman you've never seen before, look like she's in danger. Ask every man who walks by, what is your instinct? Find out why she's in danger and protect her. This is just what it is. It's what is built into it. Some men shut that down these days, right? But the fact is, the natural instinct, that is why women, even to this day, are not allowed to be in battle. Even though they join the military, even though they are in part of operations, but when it comes to frontline battle, they don't put them with men. Because it has been proven over and over again, men cannot function when women are around because their natural instinct is not to follow their training, but instead to go into protection mode. They can't help it. It's just what it is. But the point is here, when somebody opens up to you, how are you going to protect against that, right? And also, what happens if you're already past that point? What if you already have feelings for someone other than your wife? What happens, godly man, if you already have these thoughts in your head? Well, number one, you need to cut it off, and you need to do so immediately. It doesn't matter if you're going to hurt someone's feelings or not. If you are going in that direction, you need to cut it off right away, because your first and foremost responsibility is to God, and then after that is to your wife. That is 100% who it's for. So what also do you need to do? You need to bring it up to your wife. You need to let them know where you are and where you stand. And you need to pray with them, and you need to remove that temptation. There is certain rules we have in my house that we've always followed. The day me and Carly started dating, she had access to everything I had. Email, social media, Facebook, whatever it was. Back then, you guys probably, I don't know, you might remember AOL Instant Messenger. Remember that? There were all kinds of different things. She knew my passwords. She knew my emails. She could check anything, someone was going to send me. It was on the table. And right now, even today, if you text me, know that she has access to it. She unlocks my phone. My messages go through my computer. My Facebook messages. My Facebook is always logged in on my personal computer. She knows the PIN to get into my computer. She has full access. That's just a rule.
Phone is on the table right now at my house, and my wife has my passwords. So she could be spending the whole time I'm here looking through my phone.
Right. And there would be no anger if she did. There's no anger or upset because this is of course you should be able to look at this. Never cause a question. Secondly, so one, you're going to communicate with your wife and you're going to have full access for everything. If there's something, and I'll say this several times, if there's something you would be upset about her finding, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. If there's something you might be upset about her coming across or seeing, you shouldn't be doing it. Okay. But what's that?
I just think this is one we should have brought somebody else in for.
Who? Somebody from our friends? Well, of course, but they're welcome to watch it online. All right, but we'll not mention any names. So again, your first and foremost responsibility, God, then your family, okay? Secondly, some men are extremely physically driven, okay? So these men who are very much into the physical, the question is, what are you watching? We mentioned it earlier. What are you doing in private? Maybe you need some accountability. Perhaps today we're very blessed, especially with the internet, to have access to all kinds of information, but unfortunately not so blessed that a lot of that information is evil and wicked. Perhaps, there's all kinds of software out there that will block any inappropriate websites from coming into your house, to block any inappropriate videos from coming into your house. There's also accountability from other Christians. Maybe as a man who's driven this way, you need to speak with your pastor or get an accountability partner with another male, with another man, and put real barriers in place. There are things that will automatically text. If you go to an inappropriate website, it sends an auto text to your accountability partner. Hey, look what Billy Bob's up to. He's visiting, bikini gals or whatever it may be. Point is, there are ways to stop this if you want to change, if you want to fix it. Thirdly, reject and remove all the thoughts that try to weaken your marriage. Get rid of any thoughts that say, well, if I hadn't married you, then my life would be. That does not exist in the godly man's mind. Bring those thoughts captive. Eliminate this fantasy life that somehow life would be so much better had you just ended up with someone else. The fact is, if I were to ask any average man about their spouse, average man, I would say probably 8 out of 10 of them would tell you all the negatives about their spouse. Not so with the godly man. Because there was a godly man, what should you be doing? Looking at your spouse in the light of Christ, lifting her up, speaking of the good. Anytime your wife comes up in conversation, it should be how wonderful she is, not how the frustrations you had and how she lets, the kids get away with that and she does this. Everyone who knows you and hears what you say about your wife should be like, my goodness, this man is totally infatuated and in love with his wife. Think of the good things they do, because I promise you, even if there are annoying things they do, there are many, many, many good things that you have gotten so used to, you just ignore them. And of course, like I said, this is for the men, but the reverse of this is obviously also true. So that brings me to my fourth practical advice. Rehearse the covenant you made. As often as you need to, consider your wedding vows. Consider what you said. Maybe on your anniversary, watch your wedding video. Listen to what you guys say. Maybe rewrite your vow. Add a vow to it. Add another vow to it. Again, speak them to one another over a candlelight dinner. Sit down over dinner. Again, if you're really struggling, sit down and say, you know what? My health has gotten worse, but I promise to love you in sickness and in health. And go through those things again. Rehearse that covenant that you made with the wife of your youth. That's what the Bible tells us. We're supposed to rejoice with the wife of our youth. Fifth, keep a journal. I don't have time for a journal. Yes, you do. You have time for a video journal. You could record a little video. You could jot a few things down, but keep a list of everything you appreciate from your wife. Look at just today. You don't have to go through months and months. Look at today. And then once or twice a year, organize those thoughts into a little letter. Recite them to her. Go through. Say, I want to tell you the things that you did for me this year that I really appreciate. You were there when I was sick. You brought me that bowl of soup and it warmed me from the inside out. You took care. When I was tired, you took the kids and took them out to make sure they wouldn't disturb me. I noticed that. And I really appreciate, I was so tired and you really refreshed me, and just that love you had. Recite them to her. Let her know they're not unseen. Let her know that she's appreciated. She's not forgotten. She's treasured. Guys, men don't often do this. Godly men, again, not so. We need to know our wife was made for us, was designed for us, and is our glory, and make her know that that's true, not just you. This isn't to convince you. This is for you to let her know that it's there. Tell her you love that coffee she makes you. My wife makes me coffee every single morning. Remind her how you appreciate the time she spends putting on her makeup. It's easy for us to say, oh my gosh, you're taking forever. As we've been waiting forever. Why do you think she's doing it? What do you think the purpose of it is? She's trying to look beautiful for you, right? And in those rare instances, of course, she wants to spend money to get her hair done, to get whatever. Again, why is she doing it? Appreciate it. Tell her, don't forget who she's doing it for. All right, sixth. I know there's a lot in this one. Make it clear and make your wife always know that divorce is never even on the table. Okay? Agree together. The word divorce is not something either of you are going to throw around in arguments. You know what? Maybe we'd be better off if we weren't together. No. Again, like I said before, there are allowances for divorce, but that's never in part of the discussion. The purpose is always reconciliation, peace, and love. That's always what it's about. Okay? That doesn't mean it's always like divorce, even though it can happen, doesn't mean it's always necessary. And that's obviously a conversation for another time. But seventh, radical honesty. Honesty in the family. There should be no situation in when your wife is surprised by what you have done or what you are doing. There should be no situation, unless you're getting her a surprise, right? There should be no situation where she is surprised. Complete financial transparency, complete digital transparency. Like we mentioned earlier, no hidden accounts, no hidden Tinder or whatever they call them, no dating websites. Secrecy is a backdoor out of your marriage. When you have to hide the fact that you gamble on the weekends, when you have to hide the fact that you watch a show that she otherwise wouldn't want you to watch, well, then you're doing something wrong. Complete transparency. Your wife ought to know everything you do and ought to be okay with it. And if she's not okay with it, you need to either come to an agreement or stop doing it. Doesn't mean she's ruling the roost. Doesn't mean she has authority over you. It means you've committed your life to her. You've committed your life to be her spouse. Start living it, right? No dollar is spent in my home. And again, I'm not saying believe me, all these things I'm telling you, I have to work on all of them myself as well. This entire series has helped me tremendously as well to grow in my life. But just as giving you examples, I don't have a bank account that my wife doesn't have access to. I don't have a credit card my wife doesn't have access to. She can see where every dollar is spent. She can see where I went to the ATM. She can see what day it was. There is no hidden anything. So the fact is, again, you have to have complete transparency. And like I said earlier, no conversation, and in my profession and also in my Bible teaching, I have a lot of conversations with people about faith. And a lot of those conversations are with women. Ask Carly. I have a conversation. Hey, I talked with this person. Hey, I talked with that person. Here's the conversation. Full transparency. Nothing hidden, right? Because when you say till death do us part, you got to mean every word of it. All right. Other thoughts on this particular topic, about this particular principle? I think it's going to be the only one we get through today. Time's kind of running short, but this covenant faithfulness.
Well, I think throughout the Bible, Jesus is calling us to reflect. We're supposed to reflect Christ to other people, but also as husbands, we are to reflect to daughters what they might be looking for in a man. Now, chances are it goes both ways. The child is still going to make her own decisions, but seeing a godly man at home reflects what possibly she may want to look for. Still, she's going to go for what attracts her. Still, she's going to go for what interests her. But as it gets closer to maybe making the decision of getting married, what you have reflected.
The principles of a godly man is what she should be looking for. Absolutely.
Like if she's got a boyfriend who every time she walks in the room, what's up? How you doing? I missed you. You're like right away, all she's caring about is why'd you pull that phone away so fast? And it could be nothing. It could be I wasn't supposed to be looking at football scores. But the point is you took it away quickly and now she's wondering. And then she's thinking, my dad never did that. If I come in the room or something, he never shuts his laptop real fast unless he's looking at a horrible thing of surgery that he doesn't really want you to see. But those things will make a difference, and that's what we are called to do. We are called to reflect Christ in everything we do, as best we can.
Amen.
And that's the bottom line. We're all still just men and women. We're all going to make mistakes. From the beginning, Eve was so gorgeous and such a gift to Adam that he forgot himself, and he didn't protect her when she was talking to the serpent. I don't think that conversation happened in a minute. I think that conversation happened over time. She kept talking to, getting a little closer to the tree while she's talking to, he's talking about, look how great Adam is.
Yeah, who knows?
What
Maybe.
an awesome man Adam is. And then he's slowly getting her to walk closer and closer to the tree. I don't think it happened in a day. And then Adam, he's like, why do you spend so much time with that serpent? You know, it's just ridiculous. It's like, you know, let's just not do that. But then when he realized what's going to happen to her, because she took that apple, he was right there with her. He was like, oh, give me it, you know, because whatever happens to you, we're in this together, you know, and unfortunately, if he slapped it out of her hand, what are you doing? And drops to his knees and asks forgiveness, it could be a whole different story. But
Right. Anything else?
I was just gonna say, I do think fathers, especially with daughters, they set the bar, especially when they go dating, because it's like, well, just like what you said, when you start going out there and going dating and different things, and if that boy does this, and you know your mom or your dad, especially your dad, if he doesn't do that, then you probably won't even go on a date with them, because my dad doesn't, you know, drink, or my dad doesn't this, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? I do think fathers definitely set the bar. And if your bar's
In a
low-
good way and a bad way, right?
if
Yeah.
it's low, it's a
Yeah.
Well, and
Everything's
the
open.
thing is too, is like mothers also, you know, and their sons, you know, their sons want, you know, one of the things that got me was, they always say women marry someone similar to their father. When I seen my girlfriend or my daughter's first husband, I was angry. I was like, wait a minute, I remind you of him? So there's still their choice involved, but we are not called anywhere in the Bible to make you think different other than towards Christ. That's it. I want my daughters to grow up and find men that will treat them like women, you know, treat them fair, kind, and love them. But they're still gonna make their own decisions, you know, so all I can do from that point is pray. I love what Billy Graham said one time, years ago, I watched him as a young kid, but it stuck with me. And he was talking about how he was camping, and he took his 13-year-old and 10-year-old daughters, and he sat them down and they prayed together for their husbands. And they were like, Dad, I don't even have a boyfriend, this is so ridiculous, but he prayed with them for their husbands.
Yeah. And that's something that's very, and whenever Ella was first born, first thing I did with Carly is we prayed for her and her future spouse, and just pray that God would protect him, keep him pure, keep him holy, you know, because this world, that's not a favorable thing in this world. They want to have people that kind of run around and make yourself happy. No, you're not living life to please yourself. A, you're living life to please God. Secondly, you're living life to please your future family. And if you run around your whole life and do all kinds of wicked things, what kind of person are you going to be? Marriage material? Are you someone I would want for my family? If you are going to be a certain way, would you accept that behavior in your spouse, even before you're married? And hopefully the answer is no. We want to honor God with our lives and our actions. All right, guys, if you don't mind, would one of you